And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am extremely honored to welcome today multiple Pulitzer nominee Wayne Johnson, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new red hot book, The Red Canoe. Wayne, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Well, thank you, Sara. It just came out last week. And it's about a native guy who's going through a tough divorce. A teenage girl wanders into his yard and he recognizes that she's in a terrible situation. And he helps get her out of that situation. It's with the help of the girl and the girl's friends. And it's complicated because the girl's father is a cop and her problem is coming from cops who have been molesting her. So, yeah.
Yes, so that is just the tip of the metaphorical iceberg, and we can't wait to get into every single detail of it because I have a lot of questions about this book. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we are streaming live to 6 different destinations today across Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. Here's the drill. Every Monday for #Mystery Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors and you get to ask them anything. So ask this incredible writer about his process, about this canoe, about Buck and Lucy, anything you want to know. You can get the comments going right there in the comment box and I'll get them over to Wayne. So Wayne, let's kick off with the research process in this book. So one of the things that I first noticed is that you introduce Buck by his English name and then his native name. And the importance of names is not lost on me. Let's talk about why and how you did that. Why did you name these characters what you did? We just realized that Lucy's named coincidentally after a cadaver from your microbiology days. Tell us about the naming of these characters and their significance.
Well, Buck's real name is Misquadoden, which means red deer. And he was raised with that name. He was sent off to a boarding school, and he had a horrible experience there. That's another book. And this is something that he carries with him. So he got a Christian name when he was there, which is Michael Fineday. And that's what the name he goes by in popular culture. And so when trouble comes to him, he always thinks of it as coming to Michael, and he was given that name by a really radical nun named Sister Seraphim. And Seraphim told him that he was named after this archangel, and she expected things from him. So all this time later, he's really been kind of a protector of people because his experience with the boarding school and the fact that his family really suffered terrible, terrible tribulation as a result of that. So he helps people. Lucy, Gachbina, actually means everlasting bird. But the fact is, I'm part native myself, and my grandfather on my mother's side was native, and he actually came down from Lac du Flambeau, Wisconsin, and he changed his name, and he never used his native name. The joke in our family was we always called him the Great White Hunter because, of course, he was anything but a great white hunter. He was native. And so a lot of these people are in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. It has one of the largest native populations. And it's an issue whether you pass or not. And it's only recently that I've decided to self-identify as native myself because there were all sorts of things that were kind of thrown at me too when I, would say that I'd lived on the White Earth and Red Lake reservations. People would ask me, well, like at one time someone said, and this isn't a graduate class, said, well, I guess you probably know all sorts of bird songs. And I said, yeah, actually I do. And I did a couple of them, and then everyone laughed. And I thought, it's really not funny, it's just not. So.
Yeah, because this is sacred knowledge and.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the names of the birds too. And when
Mm.
it was funny, I was in the middle of this um, southern suburb of Minneapolis, and then I'd spend whole seasons up at Red Lake or White Earth, and I was in a completely different world. It was just absolutely different. In fact, we didn't even have telephone up at White Earth until 1972. So, and one time, it was funny because when they first got the telephone, my grandfather didn't know what to do with the damn thing, so he didn't want it to ring, and he put it in the freezer. And it wouldn't work again if he unplugged it and tried to plug it back in. So he put it in the freezer.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
That is, I thought that was really funny.
That is funny. I love that.
And he had like always, I'd go and visit him and he'd have all these clocks in the house. He might have 5, 7 clocks in the house, and not one of them was the right time. It just didn't matter. It really didn't. They were on Indian time. So,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. He's living by the rhythms of the sun and the darkness.
Exactly. Yeah. It
And
was just,
nature's rhythm.
and I loved it. I because everything was so regimented where I was. I mean, I was supposed to, I got into this pre-med thing, and I didn't come out of that until I was 20 something. And oh man, so to be up on the reservation was wonderful. I loved that. They'd turn us loose. I got a 30-06 when I was 10 years old and went out deer hunting with this thing. You could knock down a deer from 900 yards with that thing. It was like a cannon. It almost knocked me off my feet every time I used it. It was scary. It really was. That thing was like having a shoulder-mounted missile, to knock deer down.
That must have been quite thrilling for a young boy to.
It was. Well, I mean, and then I had these experiences too. Like the first time I shot this deer, I wasn't the best shot because I was a little kid. I was 10. I gut shot the thing. So I had to chase the thing through the woods for about a mile. And then the thing was still alive when I got to it. Then I had to kill the thing. And then my uncles cut the thing. They gutted it, put my arms in its body cavity up to my elbows, and then put a cross of blood on my forehead. That was, an initiation thing for hunting.
And how did you feel about that when you were a little boy experiencing this initiation? Were you
I
scared?
was in a state well, I was kind of a split city kid, Indian kid, and I was shocked. I really, all I could do was just go along with it. And like I was saying earlier, those things, I'm still thinking about them. They stick with you. Once you're touched by that stuff, it's part of forever.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sure. One of the things that Buck and Lucy immediately bond over as he's, as you say, going through this divorce, and he's
Right.
honing and carving his
He's making a canoe, an old style
canoe.
canoe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's impressed when that she knows
Right.
the ways that this canoe should be made in the traditional way, and he offers her to apprentice with him.
Right. Exactly.
But so they're sort of bonding over their shared knowledge and connection and understanding of Native culture, but also he as a helper and protector, which was a point of strain between him and his wife.
The point is too, again, he's a safe place for her so she can be Native again, because she hides it like everybody does. Mm-hmm. So, and he can be himself too. So that's what they end up sharing when they're building the canoe, is this kind of heritage, which is kind of dying inside them otherwise. And so it's like the whole world becomes reanimated. I'll give you an example. In Anishinaabe-Moan or Ojibwe-Moan, the language has markers for things, So there's this whole class of things which are just things, and then there are people, and there are non-human persons, and non-human persons, for example, are trees. Trees are people, but they're non-human. And so there are all these classes of things that are people, as you are, even in the language. That's the way they're identified. And it changes the way you see things. It's like you don't just go and cut a tree down, because the tree is a thing that you have a relationship with. It's a living thing that's a person, non-human person, and it's in the language even referring to it. So, and that's one reason why natives were so offended when initially these timber prospectors came in and cut down all this. They basically cut down the whole northern portion of the state. It's all second growth and third growth timber now. So they were horrified when they did that, when the timber barons came in and cut down all the forests in northern Minnesota. They were absolutely horrified at that. That was like sacrilege.
It would be. And also, I mean, I think, as you said, the importance of language and the importance of words. So if you are acknowledging trees not just as living things, but as beings with souls, as non-human persons, as you said, it's a reverence for nature that we don't have in Europe-derived cultures.
It's interesting, though, because if you followed any of the recent development in horticulture and botany, like a wonderful movie is Fantastic Fungi. Have you seen that? Well, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's terrific. But anyway, trees actually do communicate with each other, and they do through this complex system of fungi that live on their roots. And they also do it through certain kinds of aliphatic compounds and resins. So, for example, these insects, if some kind of leaf devouring insects will come in, they'll give off these somewhat poisonous resins, and the trees will all do it at the same time, communicating with each other. So it's not, that's science. That's not just so.
Wayne, I've heard that, and I've also heard that when there is a tree virus coming, or
right, that too.
Like they communicate, except for cedar trees, which are very apparently the selfish individualists of the tree world who do not communicate that information. They're the only tree who doesn't, apparently.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that follow this stuff with this book. The next book coming out has to do with a very specific kind of tree. It's called the witch tree.
That's
the little cedar spirit tree, and it's a sacred shrine to these people. But that's the next in the lineage of this whole thing.
That's what you're working on next?
It's done.
Done. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, again, it has to do with the same character, Buck, and it takes place in 1982. So it's much earlier, and it has to do with a auto insurance fraud scam that his brother's gotten caught up in.
Ooh.
And I had the firsthand experience of working with these people. So they are trying to get this money that the younger brother, he's actually a half brother, has stolen from them. And so they keep shunting him around. He's still part of the business. He can't get out of it. They'll kill him if he leaves it. And Buck gets into the middle of this thing. And he tries to find out who's running it. It's based on real people. One attorney in the Twin Cities alone was making $2 million a year off staged accidents.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had a whole host of doctors, attorneys, and then they had all these people. They're called stagers. And stagers, those were the people I worked with. And I worked with them because I was an auto mechanic, and I had a Porsche that had a rusted pan, and I didn't do any welding, so I brought it over to this outfit across from the Little Earth projects where most of my native friends lived. And what I found out was the stagers were using these at-risk populations as riders in the accidents. And so what they do is they do T-bones or swoop and squats. And what they do is they'd go after trucks, because like a Mayflower truck or a McDonald's truck was carrying $50 million of insurance. And then what they do is they get a car to go in front of it. They get the truck to hit it from behind. So it's no fault. You hit the car from behind, it's your fault. And they'd get these payouts on these things, and they get all these, they're called soft tissue injuries. Yeah. So people, claim they have migraines or, whatever it is, neurological difficulties that are hard to prove. And these doctors and attorneys were raking in, just one guy alone was making $2 million a year off of this. And when the FBI finally went after him, they threatened to kill me. And yeah, because I didn't like the work that they did, and I complained. And by that time, I knew they were shady. I talked to someone else. He said, "You know what they really do?" And I said, "No, I don't know what they do." And he said, "They're stagers for staged accidents. That's what they do. So you should stay away from them. And if they give you trouble, walk away. Don't ask for your money. Walk away." Well, I'd already complained, and it was just a nightmare. But shortly after, I thought maybe I'll have to go to the police. But the FBI went after them, and they arrested, I think it was 150 people that were involved in all the states in the United States. I think 30 states. It was a big, big deal.
Oh my goodness. Catch a Clue, welcome to the conversation, and saying, "This is how awful." She says, "My husband was an insurance fraud investigator for over 29 years.
They're out there. They're out there.
I didn't know this was a thing. Wow.
Oh yeah, and people were killed in those accidents all the time.
Did they tell the at-risk people who they were using in the cars that they were going to be in a car accident, or they just said, "Get out of the car"?
No, absolutely. No, they were part of it. And they'd get like, maybe $500 to be in a swooping squad. And they'd get clobbered, and they'd put a bunch of tires in the trunk, something like that. And every once in a while, they'd be killed or really injured, brain damaged. So it was a really dirty, dirty business, and most people didn't know about it.
Wow. Yeah, this is shocking. Oh my gosh. So that's your next book. And did you say it's called The Witching Tree?
The Witch Tree.
The Witch Tree. And when will that be out?
Well, probably a year from now, I hope, knock on wood, this is still, it's all done though. It's so, and there's more too. I've got, there's also something that I'm, working on having to do with the boarding school years, and those were really awful. And the boarding schools were rife with pedophiles, and so these poor kids would be sent 300 miles away from home in the middle of the winter so they wouldn't run away. If they did run away, what they did was the kids would make it all the way back up to, say, Red Lake, and what would happen was the cops would make sure that the state pulled their annuities payments so that the parents literally couldn't feed themselves. They didn't have any money because the children had run away from the boarding school. That's the way they got you, So if your kid disappeared, you didn't get your annuities payments,
So and this was a systematic ripping of Indigenous children away from.
It was widespread all over the United States. And if you saw recently those reports in Canada, they found the remains of, hundreds of children that had been buried on the premises of these boarding schools. Yeah, no. And the kids got trachoma, tuberculosis. They were farmed out to local businesses for free labor. They were supposed to pay for their own food that way. It was really a corrosive thing that really has to come to light. So.
Wayne, what was the purpose of this? Was it the intended erasure of Indigenous culture?
Oh, absolutely, it was. Yeah, no, it was genocide. It was flat out pure genocide. The idea was the original creator of Carlisle. That was the first boarding school. He said, "Kill the Indian, save the man." So, and the idea was to acculturate these kids, but that really wasn't what was happening very much at the boarding schools. So, and then, some of my forebears experienced those things. So, and I heard firsthand accounts of what they were like. In fact, well, hopefully you'll read about it someday, So.
And so the goal of this is you want to bring these stories to light, to reveal, to take peel the curtain back from.
Yeah, that's one thing. Plus, it's just a hell of a story. The fact is, for example, if you read about Ernest Shackleton's expedition, which is just outrageous, the endurance, the fact that they survived it all, this is the same thing. The fact that these kids survive some of this stuff is just, it's head shakingly. You just think that's that's one hell of a story. It's ugly, but at the same time, it's wholly engaging. Because like, how does anybody deal with that?
I've been listening for a couple of years to the Missing and Murdered podcast about Indigenous Canadians.
Right.
And so
Well,
similarly, the
that's
children.
the Lucy picture in this book. See, the typical picture was she'd be molested, murdered, and her body would be disposed. That's what would happen. And that happens quite a bit. There's a problem with Indigenous women disappearing on reservations. And part of the problem is murders can only be investigated on reservations by the FBI. The local tribal police do not have the jurisdictional rights to investigate these things. So they always bring the FBI in, and the problem is the FBI oftentimes they're way behind the curve. They don't know what's going on, who's who, or it's hard for them to do research. Whereas if this were done in-house by people that were living there, it would be a different situation. So.
Yeah, so I learned from the Missing and Murdered podcast, where taking place in Canada, where they were investigating a missing girl from the 1970s, children forcibly taken from Native families and
Right.
forcibly adopted into foster care and adopted actually from newspaper pictures as though they were animals in a shelter. It's really, and often these children would go to homes that were not great homes and end up abused or missing or murdered. And
or used as free labor. That was the other thing. Yeah.
So Wayne, is it hard for you to tell these stories? How do you disconnect at the end of the day and be okay yourself?
Good question. It's kind of it's really a labor of love is what it is. I mean, this is my family. I'm always writing. I don't make stuff up. I wish I did. I wish I made stuff up whole cloth. I don't. I always use source material, things from people I know, things I've experienced myself. This girl, Lucy, in the story is somebody that was very well known to me. And I knew her inside and out, and the psychological states that I write about in the book are taken directly from what she related to me. So I saw it happen. So, as a result, I feel like there's a kind of authenticity that I can bring to it. And I really like doing that because I think their efforts were heroic, and they meant something to me. I mean, I have to admit, my life was saved up there time and time again by people who were kind to me, and this is what I'm doing now. I'm making something of it.
I love that.
Thank you.
As you find yourself a thread in the tapestry of humanity having been helped, and now
absolutely
passing that on and helping others, being a thread yourself.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to write a 15-year-old girl in a pink hoodie? Was that hard for you, Wayne? Because that doesn't look like you.
No, because that person is somebody I knew really well. Yeah.
Did you have her read it and ask for her feedback?
Yeah, she's really she's Native. She said years ago we were talking about this horrible thing that happened to her, and I was more upset by it than she was, and she said, "Get over it." I was thinking, I'm not getting over it. I'm still thinking about it,
Did she have changes for you, Wayne, or was she like, "No, that's me"?
She did have some pointers on how she experienced certain things. She schooled me a little bit on her way of responding to certain things. I thought, that's okay. Tell me, I'm good with it.
Yeah. So I let the character of Lucy, this 15-year-old young girl with tattoos of barbed wire on the back of her hands, trying to be tougher than she is, living at home with a single father who is, when he's drinking and suffering PTSD himself, gets violent and physically abuses her, hits her as he also hit her mother. She's in a very painful, very tough situation at home. And then her father's police coworker, Arn, perpetrating horrific abuse against her, which is, as you said, a problem because she's in an inaccessible place to be investigated, even if she had the courage to tell the police, which she wouldn't, because
they threatened to kill her. Yeah, exactly. If she does anything about it, they'll kill her father. Not her. They're going to kill her father.
Yeah.
And since she's the kind of girl she is, that's the end of her life if that happens. She's going to end up in a foster home, like she's already been in a foster home, right? She doesn't like it. I don't blame her. I didn't like it either.
There's not a lot of great choices for Lucy. As Booklist raved whilst awarding you a starred review. I'm going to put it here in the comments so everyone can read it together. The book is heartwarming and gut-wrenching, a nuanced, superbly written justice thriller, laced with unflinching grit and social commentary. So first of all, congratulations on
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Many starred reviews. Let's talk about this one first. So while you are writing about both heartwarming and gut-wrenching, first of all, how do you balance that so that it's not just like so painful to read that it's unreadable? How do you make it heartwarming and gut-wrenching?
It's just real stuff. It really is. It's just real stuff. It's the way it happened. It really is the way it happened. And you get it all at the same time. You get those moments when everything's okay, and then everything's really not okay. Not okay at all. And that's, what the direction of the book is. I mean, from the onset of her realizing that they're probably going to murder her because she's gotten this thing, and finally they fulfilled the whole deal in her molestation, she realizes that, and also it turns out her good friend who she's in love with, so she's kind of, I wouldn't even say she's bisexual, she's just young, and who cares anyway. So, and she loves her friend, but she realizes her friend's got something going on too, and she isn't sure what it is. And then when it finally comes together, she realizes the same character has basically earmarked her for this. And it's basically children who lose their parents, And that was the problem with some of the really terrible clergy that they sent into reservations. Oftentimes, they were there on a reprimand already, and they'd been shunted around to 2 or 3 different parishes, and they were serial pedophiles, and they'd end up on Indian reservations. That's the last place they were, because the people there didn't have the wherewithal. It wasn't the wherewithal. They didn't have the means to actually bring all that to light, and it was buried. So the difference here is this guy, Buck, the thing that what I think, and he's based on a real guy too. Buck is he's one of my favorite people on earth. He actually made it into National League Baseball. And he was compared to Sandy Koufax. Yeah. And then when he fell out of this thing, he had this cataclysmic thing happen to him. He actually ended up working for the mob in Cleveland. He was an enforcer because he was big. He was really big. Imagine waking up in you're a scumbag bad debt guy who's money from the mob, for horse racing or some stupid thing like that. You wake up in the middle of the night and there's
Buck,
250-pound native guy with a big nose sitting on the end of your bed with a handgun. It's like, oh man, I wouldn't want that.
No, that's terrifying. You definitely want Buck on your side.
Yeah, that's the thing. And he's that kind of guy. So he doesn't take shit from anybody. He really doesn't. And I know this guy. Oh my God, he is one tough bugger. He's so damn tough. I mean, ugh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm learning so much. I had no idea that Lucy and Buck were based on real life people.
No, this guy's he's yeah.
Did
So I used to like hanging out with him because when I hung out with him, people got got nasty. Man, he had this terrible look. They call him the Killer Chief look.
so did you let Buck, the real life Buck, read the book too, Wayne?
Oh yeah, he knows. I mean,
What
yeah.
did he think of himself on
Oh,
the
he
page?
loves it.
He likes it? Okay. He likes his characters.
He wants me to knock more people off. Says that guy should knock off more of those bad people.
Okay, more of a bruiser.
Yeah.
Well,
The thing is, the guy reads too, though. I mean, he's a real reader.
yeah.
The guy actually, because he was tutoring his half brother when he was younger, he got into junior grade books, and he really got interested in philosophy. So he knew about Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, and because he had to read this stuff, his half brothers, he's a genius. I mean, but he's a troubled guy. His real name is Delbert, and Delbert and I have been friends for forever. God, how long? I don't know, 50 years, I guess. And Delbert's a real character. God,
So is Delbert 250 pounds? Is he big, Delbert?
Oh well, that's the half brother.
Oh, that's the half brother. Okay.
Yeah. Buck. No, he's at one time when he got a little overweight, they called him Jumbo, and he was 300 pounds.
Oh,
and he's not fat. he's big.
Just pure muscle. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Delbert and his half brother on your good side.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Wayne, the Red Canoe is one of the most anticipated crime fiction books of 2022. Congratulations on that, as well as one of the most anticipated mysteries and thrillers of 2022 by Criminal Element. The praise just keeps going.
Thank you. Jeez.
William Kent Kreuger raving that you are one of the most original voices. And from you comes a powerful story of brutal violence and righteous vengeance. He calls you a master storyteller, has crafted a tale with both compassion and wisdom, and keeps the suspense building relentlessly toward the novel's bitter cold climax. Congratulations on all of this praise.
Thank you so much.
Wayne, let me ask you, as someone who, again, earning all of these starred reviews, all of this these amazing praise, most anticipated everywhere, and yourself a multiple Pulitzer Prize nominee, what do you think you have learned over a lifetime of writing and thinking about writing? What are some of the hard-earned lessons that you would pass on as a thread in the writing community tapestry?
Toni Morrison said this too, which is you really have to write the book you want to read. You have to, otherwise you're wasting your time. And you have to use the aesthetic that you appreciate most, the language you appreciate most, characters, the character orientation. I mean, and it is interesting because there are, sometimes people ask me, what's your favorite book? And I think there's no way on earth I could say that, because there's so many different kinds of books. I mean, for example, there's a whole lineage of Christie, which really goes all the way back to Poe and Murders in the Rue Morgue. And, stories of ratiocination are kind of fun. There are a lot of them. You got, Kinsey Milhone and, that whole thing with kind of alliterative titles, A is for alibi, etc. It's fun. It advertises itself as fun. And then there's stuff like, Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which is like, oh my God, that's really something. You think, gave me nightmares for 3 weeks afterwards, but it's beautifully written. I mean, everything he writes is gorgeous. So, it's like, what are you after? What do you feel like? And, especially in these COVID times, notice how different even your viewing preferences are. I mean, like for me, Breaking Bad was candy for a long time, but now it seems kind of dark. I'm thinking there's so much dark stuff, So I don't know, but you have to write the book you want to read at the time you're working on it, and the thing that's closest to you, and the thing that's most in your heart to write. And you should never be shy about the details about people and what you love. That's the whole point. You have to love it, otherwise don't bother. Just, write your heart out. That's what you have to do.
How do you keep showing up on the page, book after book, story after story, pouring these deepest hearts and these painful stories out, Wayne? How do you replenish yourself?
Uh, uh, I'm a regular exercise guy. I ride a bike every other day, mountain bike, like 15 miles, and I ski. I climb mountains. I used to fly hang gliders. I climb mountains once a week, really. I'll go climbing. So I get a lot of, outside time, and that's what really does it. Yeah, because otherwise I kind of sink into this thing, and I have a kind of bias toward steeping myself in the environment of the characters I'm working in. So I have to do that. I have to be inside it. I can't write from the outside. So for me, writing is an inside job. It really is.
So did you hone some boats, some
Oh
canoes?
yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I've done that.
You
And
get the feeling of
yeah,
working
even
with.
even like with this book, The Witch Tree, I did auto body, and that's hard work. I put back when it was poisonous and you didn't have your own self-contained breathing apparatus, you just breathe. You're breathing all this dust and garbage. But I did that, and so I could write about it, and I wanted to because you feel like I paid for it. But it's the authenticity of life. You're not just making stuff up, you're drawing from the real world and into a narrative to give it to people. It's like ultimately the way I think of this is it's like a gift. Any book I write is a gift to the reader. It's like you want to understand this part of life about these people that are beautiful. You want to understand a little bit about who they are. Read this. I mean, this will tell you what it's like. Like my book, Don't Think Twice, with Paul Two Persons in it. He's a guy who runs a resort, and I worked on a resort, Sabaskong Bay Lodge, in Canada, and I worked there for years. And so I was actually a fishing hunting guide, and I know the business inside out, and it goes all the way back to Barney's Ball Lake, also, which I was at from the time I was old enough to, the time I was born. My parents took me up there, and that was again part of that's a legacy of my mother and my grandfather. So.
Well, I love hearing the inside scoop on these characters and how they came to be on the page. It's really special to hear that. Publishers Weekly is saying, intriguing. Readers will care enough about Buck and Lucy to see how they fare. So Buck is coming back, a previous version of Buck, a 1982 version. What about Lucy? Is she going to come back?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I guess that will, in part, yes. As a matter of fact, I already had this. It's really interesting. I know someone out here in Salt Lake, and she runs something called Black Honey Tattoo.
Okay.
I mean, she's somebody I just love. I love meeting people like this. But her name's Velvet. And she's a tattoo artist, I think. Running Black Honey Tattoo. Her name's I think, yeah, that's the kind of person I like to write about.
Do you think that's who Lucy would grow up to be, is running the Black Honey Tattoo parlor?
No. She would be a friend of a person like that. Absolutely, you better believe it, because she is the person this is based on. Yeah, she's just like that. I mean, she was so crazy. Oh my God, man. She was a handful and a half.
Oh my goodness. Well, everybody, you can grab your copy of The Red Canoe tonight from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore, Murder by the Book. I'm popping the link in the comments. So just click over, grab your copy. and the good folks at Murder by the Book will ship it out to you bright and early tomorrow so that you too can enjoy the story of Buck and Lucy and this adventure that they are on together, trying to save each other. Library Journal awarding it a starred review, raving a powerful story of Indigenous people who are abused but also determined to battle brutality and corruption themselves when they cannot rely on the authorities. So you too will be immersed in this powerful story from Wayne Johnson. So Wayne, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for asking me
about the Red Canoe. I loved hearing all about it. And I love this beautiful cover that Paulus gave you. It's right. Stunning. I don't know if everyone can see it.
I'm very happy with it myself. Yeah, it's lovely. We worked together on that, so that was interesting. Or I had some suggestions initially, and they made them, yeah, it looks great.
It's absolutely beautiful, and I loved it. Well, Wayne, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and
the
story. What's that?
Good luck with your work.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone
to everyone listening. Yeah.
Yay. And I will be back at the top of the hour with Dr. Tammy Giuliano. Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wayne.
Okay. Bye-bye.